Services. Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Edwards, the Director and CEO of the Frist Center. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Frist and many of you to Nashville. We are really thrilled that so many of you are here today for the Symposium and to see Sanctity pictured, the art of the Dominican and Franciscan orders in Renaissance Italy, which was organized by Frist Curator Trinita Kennedy. Trinita also will also serve as the moderator for today's panel. We're extremely grateful to the lenders and sponsors who made all of this possible, and I want to add my personal thanks to today's speakers and the catalog contributors. In just a moment, Trinita will acknowledge all of you more fully, but with no less gratitude than my own. Your presence is very gratifying because it lets us know that there's an appetite for in-depth studies of the art of historic periods, art created before telephones or television or the internet. This seems a very good moment to ask you to silence your cell phones. Please feel free to text or tweet throughout the day if you like, though. Before I introduce Trinita, I'd like to thank Billy Frist, Chairman and President, Ken Roberts, President Emeritus, and the entire Board of Trustees, our staff, and our volunteers. Trinita Kennedy has led the team in every respect, but we both want to thank the Education Department for helping organize today's symposium, especially Megan Robertson, Associate Curator of Interpretation, and Jenny Sankson, Assistant Curator of Interpretation. Trinita Kennedy earned a bachelor's degree from Washington University at St. Louis and a master's degree from the Institute of Fine Arts at New York University, where she also did her doctoral work focusing on the art of the Franciscans. She served as research associate at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, working principally on the unforgettable exhibition Venice and the Islamic World, 828 to 1797, before joining the staff at the Frist Center in 2007. Throughout her tenure here, she has continued to publish and lecture on Renaissance art. She is the author with John Nolan of A Divine Light, Northern Renaissance Paintings from Bob Jones University Museum and Gallery. The exhibition book and today's symposium for Sanctity Pictured are the results of many years of preparation. During her initial interview in 2007 for the position at the Frist, we asked Trinita what her dream exhibition would be. She presented us with a proposal for a version of the exhibition now installed on the second floor. The project has had some twists and turns along the way, and every curator present knows that few exhibitions include every work one would like, and that an exhibition can require revisions based on one's ability to turn at right angles when a straight line leads to a dead end. With grace and fortitude, Trinita did bring this symposium, the exhibition, and the book to fruition. I encourage you to purchase a copy of the book, which includes her diligent research and thoughtful writing, as well as essays by leading scholars, many of whom are here today. Trinita was able to do all of this while fulfilling her curatorial duties at the Frist, which required her to digest and interpret exhibitions that ranged from the art of Islam to Japanisme to the golden age of couture and more. Fortunately for us, she was able to compartmentalize these distractions and forge ahead on Sanctity Pictured with aplomb, and we are grateful. Because Trinita left for family medical leave just before the opening of Sanctity Pictured, I spent more time with couriers than is customary. Each person I spoke with was delighted that a work that he or she loves so dearly was being recognized for its significance. We hope each of you will leave richer for the time you spent with us today. Please join me in welcoming Trinita Kennedy.
Thank you, Susan. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today to listen to a series of short lectures inspired by the exhibition that I organized. A major scholarly catalog written by 14 art historians accompanies our exhibition. 4 of the authors who played a particularly significant role in the project are speaking at our symposium today. We have invited them to go beyond the catalog in their talks and share with us new insights into the works of art on view in our exhibition. Each lecture will last 30 minutes, followed by 10 minutes for questions and answers. Standing microphones have been set up on the floor to facilitate our discussions. If you refer to the front of your program, you will see that this morning we will hear Christine Shaka speak, and then we will break at noon for a long lunch intended to give you an opportunity to see the exhibition. We will reconvene at 1:30 for papers by Ann Leader, Donald Cooper, and Holly Flora, with a 15-minute break at 3 o'clock between the 3rd and 4th lectures. We have had to make one important change to our program this week. I regret having to announce that Janet Robeson is not well and therefore will not be here to deliver her paper, Dominicans, Franciscans, and the Art of Praying. We will instead hear Ann Leader's talk, Pray for Us, Tomb Patronage in Mendicant Churches. We are immensely grateful to Anne for being our pinch hitter. The symposium concludes at 4 o'clock, which allows everyone another chance to see the exhibition today before the museum closes at 5:30. I would like to thank our speakers and everyone in the audience for coming. Some of you have traveled a great distance, in frigid weather no less, to be here. As Susan said, I spent many years working on this project, and it gives me enormous pleasure to spend a day with others who share my interest in the role played by the Dominican and Franciscan orders in the great flowering of art in Italy that we call the Renaissance. I've looked forward to this event for a long time. Public programs organized by the Frist Center's Education Department enrich and enliven all our exhibitions. I'm indebted to my colleagues Ann Henderson, Jenny Sankson, and most of all, Megan Robertson for expertly organizing the symposium and helping me bring such an extraordinary lineup of speakers here today. Many people in the audience have contributed to the realization of the exhibition in some way. We have among us representatives from lending institutions, Frist Center members, colleagues, docents and volunteers, catalog authors, scholars cited in the catalog, and Nashville's Dominican nuns who have lent their beautiful voices to our audio guide. I'm grateful to all of you. I would also like to take this opportunity to express my deep appreciation to Dr. Susan Edwards, Director and CEO of the Frist Center, for supporting and investing in scholarly exhibitions, their catalogs and programs, such as this symposium today. Throughout the long gestation of this project, she was its staunchest advocate and never doubted that we could secure the loans. It is a pleasure to work for and with her, and we are all the beneficiaries of Susan's boundless enthusiasm. Exhibition support has been provided by Lynn and Ken Melkus, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Samuel H. Kress Foundation, the Robert Lehman Foundation, the Frist Center of Friends of Italian Art, and furthermore, a program of the J.M. Kaplan Fund. Union Station Hotel is our exhibition hospitality sponsor, and Doubletree by Hilton, downtown Nashville, is our symposium hospitality sponsor. The Frist Center is supported by grants from the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and the Metro Nashville Arts Commission. The Kress Foundation, in fact, awarded us 2 grants for this exhibition, one for a research fellowship and another for the catalog, and we are delighted to have its president, Max Morimer, with us here today. We are also pleased to have 12 Kress paintings and 2 Kress bronze medals drawn from various collections around the country now on view. While we were organizing this exhibition, Max sent us these old newspaper clippings from the Kress archives. They date to 1934, when Italian Renaissance paintings from the Samuel H. Kress collection were shown at Nashville at our city's replica of the Parthenon down the street. In the upper left, you see some rather grumpy visitors to the exhibition in their stylish clothing, and in the middle, the truck that delivered the paintings to the venue. These clippings made us realize something amazing, and that is that it had been 80 years since a major exhibition of the Italian Renaissance had been presented at a museum in Nashville. This is far too long, and it has personally been incredibly gratifying for me to organize this show for this particular community. To make the most of this occasion, our installation is designed to give our visitors the feeling of being transported to Italy through evocative architectural motifs, murals of works of art that remain in situ, and music sung by the religious orders on our audio guide. For this exhibition, we have borrowed works of art from 28 American museums and libraries, including the J. Paul Getty Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the National Gallery of Art, and the Pierpont Morgan Library. In addition, the Frist Center is exhibiting works for the first time in its history from the Vatican Museums and the Vatican Library. Believe it or not, we were far along in our planning of this exhibition and had already requested loans from the Vatican when Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio of Argentina was elevated to the papacy and serendipitously took the name Francis in honor of St. Francis of Assisi. This enormously popular pope has made the ideals of the mendicant saints of the Renaissance, depicted in all the works of art in our exhibition, seem exciting and relevant for our own day. It is a particular thrill to be able to include in our presentation this treasure from the Vatican Library, a 13th century choir book likely made for St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. It shows St. Francis's two most famous miracles, his receipt of the stigmata on the left and the preaching to the birds on the right. The inclusion of these scenes in a papal manuscript attests to the close relationship between the popes and the Franciscans in the 13th century. To the best of my knowledge, this book has never before traveled to the United States. Even in Italy, it has rarely been exhibited, and at the Vatican Library is normally only accessible to the most serious of scholars. Few of us in this room will likely ever have the chance to see this in person again. My colleagues and I began brainstorming about the checklist for this exhibition in 2007 and have been working on it ever since. One of the inspirations for organizing it was a spate of illuminating new studies on the art of the Dominican and Franciscan orders. Our catalog authors have been doing some of the most exciting research. Major studies by them, including Donald Cooper and Janet Robeson's The Making of Assisi, and by other scholars, such as Caroline Bruzelius's Preaching, Building, and Burying, Friars in the Medieval City, were published as we were going to press with the catalog. This spring, we look forward to the volume of essays edited by Susanna Rutherglen on one of the most significant and enigmatic Franciscan pictures in America, Giovanni Bellini's St. Francis in the Desert, in the Frick Collection in New York. In short, an incredible amount of fascinating work is being done now. I think a lot of people would agree with me that the percolating of all these new ideas is making it an exhilarating time to be studying Dominican and Franciscan art of the Renaissance. Our exhibition builds on recent scholarship and itself makes a contribution by doing something that has never been attempted anywhere before, not even in Italy, where it would be far easier to do so. Ours is the first major study to compare and contrast the art of the Dominicans and Franciscans during the whole of the Renaissance, from the early 13th century through the mid-16th century. Architectural historians, most notably Wolfgang Schenklun and Caroline Bruzelius, have done comparative studies of Dominican and Franciscan buildings, but art historians have tended to think about Dominican and Franciscan works of art in isolation. Our exhibition opens with a large reproduction of a 15th century fresco painted by the Florentine artist Benozzo Gozzoli for a church in the central Italian hill town of Montefalco. At the center of the composition are St. Francis on the left in the unbleached habit of the Franciscans, and St. Dominic on the right in the black and white habit of the Dominicans. The two founders were contemporaries and began their new religious orders at roughly the same time. According to legend, they encountered one another in Rome in 1216. Recognizing one another as brothers, they embraced. The subject matter of this fresco can be found in both Franciscan and Dominican contexts. This fresco by Benozzo Gozzoli is in a Franciscan church, but his master, Fra Angelico, for example, painted several examples in Dominican manuscripts and panel paintings. The theme highlights the many ideals the two orders share. Most importantly, they are both committed to preaching to the laity in cities and are mendicants, which means they beg for their food and shelter. The theme of Saints Francis and Dominic embracing also reminds us that there is a great deal of respect and affection between these two orders. Every year, on the feast of St. Francis, Dominicans bring Franciscans bread as a gift, while on the feast of St. Dominic, Franciscans give wine. One of the Nashville Dominicans reminded me of that wonderful tradition of gift-giving between Dominicans and Franciscans. But when she told this story, she had a gleam in her eye when she noted that it was far better to receive wine than bread, and therefore the Dominicans received the better end of the deal. That ribbing by a contemporary Dominican about the Franciscans tells us something else important about the relationship between these two orders, which is that they are great rivals. That is a thread that runs throughout our entire exhibition. It is evident already in one of the earliest works of art that we have on view, the Getty's Abbey Bible. While working on this project, I became completely enamored by this particular folio, the lower margin of which shows Dominican and Franciscan friars standing before lecterns on which choir books are placed. In medieval and Renaissance manuscripts made for religious orders, it is common to see choirs singing. It is, however, rare to see choirs of two different religious orders depicted side by side as they are here. The Abbey Bible was made for the Dominicans, and they are the ones shown receiving Christ's blessing as they sing. The Franciscans watch silently as the Dominicans harmonize their voices and turn the page of their choir book. The placement of the Dominicans is also significant. Not only are they slightly elevated in comparison to the Franciscans, they are represented as near to Christ and stand on his right, which Christian art and thought designates as the side of the righteous. The margins of medieval and Renaissance manuscripts are often the site of social commentary, and this page in the Abbey Bible was illuminated at a time when both the Dominican and Franciscan orders were undergoing a great expansion in Italy. Precisely because these two orders were not self-supporting the way monastic orders were, but rather were mendicants who relied on the Pope and the laity for their financing, they were one another's greatest competitors. They were always keenly aware of what the other one was doing and often acted in opposition to one another. In the Renaissance, the Dominicans and Franciscans seized upon the power of images and frequently used them to support competing claims for their saints. We see this most importantly in depictions of their stigmatic saints. The Franciscans like to claim that Francis and only Francis had received the marks of Christ's crucifixion on his flesh. In our exhibition, we have a few of the many thousands of Franciscan representations of St. Francis receiving the stigmata made during the Renaissance. One example is the small object on the left. It is a morse, which is a brooch worn by a priest to close his vestment here at his chest, and we borrowed it from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Its composition is based on famous frescoes in the Franciscan churches of San Francesco in Assisi and Santa Croce in Florence. The Dominicans also have a stigmatic saint, St. Catherine of Siena, and it is telling that the Franciscans went to great lengths in the decades after her canonization to try to limit the representation of her experiencing the miracle. The Franciscan Pope Sixtus IV repeatedly issued bans on depictions of the subject, and ultimately few examples were made in the Renaissance. They are so rare that I was concerned that we would not be able to include one in our exhibition. To me, therefore, one of the vital loans is the Getty's picture of St. Catherine of Siena receiving the stigmata. And we are doubly fortunate because the artist is Domenico Beccafumi, one of the most exquisite painters of the Renaissance. Our exhibition has presented an opportunity to spotlight these and other extraordinary early works of Dominican and Franciscan art that are now in American collections. It is a delight to incorporate little-known but undeniably beautiful manuscripts from the Lilly Library of Indiana University, such as this 13th century Dominican choir book on the left, while the Detroit Institute of Arts has lent us one of its 3 panels from Sassetta's masterpiece, the great Borgo San Sepolcro altarpiece. Our exhibition is particularly rich in illuminations and panel paintings from the 13th century, an era of Italian art that has seldom been featured in exhibitions in the United States, because in general the survival rate is poor, and so there are very few examples to draw from. For those of you who fancy yourselves connoisseurs, I invite you to examine closely this panel lent by the Allen Memorial Art Museum of Oberlin College. The painting represents the Virgin and Child with St. Francis and was likely made in Siena in the mid-1280s. Some scholars have posited that it is by the seminal Sienese painter Duccio di Buoninsegna, but until our catalog, this painting had never been published in color. It was, in fact, in such poor condition that the Allen had not put it on view since the early 1980s. The Frist Center and the Allen collaborated on the conservation of the picture, and our exhibition is the first time it has been publicly seen for 30 years. We are now in a much better position to evaluate its authorship. It is on view in our galleries next to a large reproduction of the Rucellai Madonna, a documented work by Duccio from 1285. I encourage you to compare the works and think for yourself whether Duccio painted the Allen's picture. Within the context of our exhibition, it is also interesting to compare and contrast the iconography of these 2 pictures, because the Rucellai Madonna was made for the Dominican Church of Santa Maria Novella in Florence, while the Allen's panel was clearly made for a Franciscan or a lay follower of the Franciscans. Like many Renaissance artists, Duccio worked for both orders. No visit to our exhibition is complete without listening to the audio guide, which was written and produced by my colleague, Megan Robertson. She and I invited 2 local choirs to sing from the pages of 2 of the choir books in the exhibition. With Nashville being Music City, we thought it would be particularly fruitful and meaningful to emphasize the intimate relationship between song and art in the Renaissance. A male a cappella choir known as Schola Pacis sang from the Lilly Library's antiphonary made for Dominican friars. We recorded them at Ocean Way Studios on Nashville's famed Music Row. The sound engineer noted that the recording studio had been used for many different kinds of music, including rock, classical, and most important of all, country, but it was the first time that they had ever recorded 13th century Dominican chant. The Dominican Sisters of St. Cecilia sang from the Getty's Gradual, made for Dominican nuns circa 1270. One of the things that is so impressive about the Nashville Dominicans is their emphasis on tradition. When my colleagues and I went to meet with the sisters to ask them to sing a particular chant from the choir book, they told us they already knew it well because they continued to sing it during Mass on the Feast of St. Dominic every August. St. Cecilia is the patron saint of music, and song is an integral part of life at the Nashville Convent, which has been here in Nashville since before the Civil War. For the audio guide, we recorded the sisters in their beautiful chapel. Hearing the choir of nuns sing on the audio guide is itself wonderful, but seeing and hearing them in person is unforgettable because it is so inspired. I therefore am extremely delighted that they have agreed to sing for us here today and would like to invite them up to the stage. After their performance, we will begin our first lecture. Thank you. And Kirk, actually, if we could have the presentation back up again on the screen, then we can see the page that the nuns are singing from. There we go. There it is on the left.